Oh, hello everyone. Right, being the first of the flower pot men to speak, I'll try to be a little bit more interesting than flobber dobber. Right, what I want to talk about on this opening slot of it is we're going to obviously have an open discussion tonight by the sound of it, and there's going to be a lot of questions afterwards which, you know, any aimed at me of any description I'm delighted to answer. But I think it's important that we actually understand as well that it's not doom and gloom right now. The reason why, and I only want to refer to this once in my opening remarks, the reason why I want to see a change in the leader is because I believe we have an absolutely golden opportunity. And why do I think that? Well, it's because over the last 6 months, I've really stepped up going out to talk to the branches, go to public meetings, Brexit rallies across the country, and the appetite for someone to speak up for the people is huge. There is an absolute desire, a burning desire of those British people to have someone articulately and effectively argue the case for them. When I go to each and every area, now the crowds now are not all UKIP members because we've lost so many members. But what we've got is patriotic people who believe in Brexit. And they don't believe in Theresa May's idea of Brexit. They believe in true independence and freedom for our country, which is not the same as the lie we're being sold by the government. It's not the same. And for someone to go out there, a party, to speak with passion, conviction and truth, saying you're being lied to, saying that there's real hope here of a renaissance for our country, a real change in our country, where we can bring back manufacturing industry, where we can export to the world, where we can make our own laws and make sure we're tougher on criminals, and we can make sure we're tougher on mass immigration. We can make sure we're tougher on the Islamification of the country. We can make sure that the people are represented. Nobody else can do that but us. And you know what? The British people know that. They know it, and they're looking at us at the moment with absolute horror. Because they look at a party that not just over these last few months, but actually for about 2 years has been in decline. And why are we in decline? It's because the people at the top have not run the party correctly. Now I'm not going to, it's not just all aimed at the current incumbent. There have been dreadful mistakes in the way this party's run. But we've thrown away a golden opportunity. You know, the latest poll I saw said we're on 5%. We should be on 25%. There's an ineffective Labour opposition who are completely crazed Marxists. There's a Conservative government which are, frankly, quislings, selling the country out. And there's us, and a watching public, waiting for us to pull our socks up and actually do what we're here to do. You go out onto the streets, you go to the branches, you go to any Brexit rally, and people will come to you and say one thing: why don't you guys get your act together? And it's time that we did. And it starts from the top. And it's not just one man. It's the whole setup at the top of the party. And I've said this before, as a serving MEP since 2014, I've not done as well as I should have done. No one who's a spokesman or a senior figure in this party has done the job as well as they could. But we still have time. We have a golden, glowing chance. Those 10 or 11 branches I've been to recently, those 4 and 5 universities, those open-air rallies for Brexit, they show that people still want us. They need us. We've got to do this right. We have a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do this right. Because if we fail, then all hope of freedom fails. It will be the end. And we're talking about this year. We're not talking about a long-term plan of 4 or 5 years. We're talking about right here and right now. If UKIP does not get its act together, this country, as we know it, will end. It's that simple. You've got PESCO, the European Army. You've got the jurisdiction of the European courts. You've got the economic control of the EU over us. You've got the fact that for a transitional period, we will be given rules and regulations that come from the EU without any representation at the same time as our taxpayers' money is going to them. It's absolutely criminal. Taxation without representation. You would have thought that politicians would get that that's a bad idea. This is our time. This is our opportunity. We can make a real change. This is the most important year in this country since 1941. This is the year where we decide, are we going to be a free people, an independent nation, trading with the world, trusting our people through democracy and giving them the chance to speak up? Or are we going to become a vassal state of the EU, giving up on all hope for the future for our children and grandchildren? Well, I tell you now, by God, I won't be giving up, and I know the activists won't be giving up either, but we've got a golden chance to make sure the party functions efficiently with an effective, experienced person in charge, and not one who right now has shown they're out of their depth. The time is right for us to be decisive, to make the change and to push forward as a united party and change this country for the better forever. And I, for one, hope and pray that we can all unite behind that and really make a difference.
So the question is, what are we going to do about political correctness, hate crime, I think? Yeah. That one might be working.
Well, I'll kick off briefly on that one, because for those of you with a long memory, when I joined UKIP, I joined as the spokesman for the campaign against political correctness. And I made a few headlines because I dared to hold a gollywog doll. And it was just to discuss political correctness. And frankly, this is when the party had some balls. And we were prepared to stand our ground. And we're prepared to say, if you don't like it, that's tough, you can be offended, but it's our right to express it. And people loved it. And that's what made us great. That's what gave us the power we had, was the fact that we weren't afraid. We weren't cowering away behind politically correct terms. And we weren't acting like some kind of middle-of-the-road Lib Dem kind of party. We weren't. We were the absolute opposite. So, sir, I absolutely agree with the premise of that question and that point that was made. And what we need to do is get back to having some real courage, real guts, and actually saying it like it is, in the terms that the people understand. And if the people, the elite, don't like it, tough. Because we're here to speak for the people in those straightforward terms, and we need leadership who are prepared to do it.
Yes.
Right, I've got a very brief example. A very brief example about the communication skills of Henry Bolton. Now, you will have heard himself and his attack poodles on social media stating that Indigo Group is all against him, some dreadful conspiracy. Well, the last meeting we had in January, Henry was invited 5 times. Twice verbally, once with a text, twice by email. Now, I was lucky because on 2 of those occasions he accepted and acknowledged that I'd spoken, which was a rarity. And what he actually said was, I'll be back to you by the end of the day. Well, that event took place early in January, and here we are, and guess what? Never heard a word back. So this awful group that's trying to upset poor old Henry, he didn't even have the courtesy to respond to an invitation to dinner. The brief answer is that when Henry's removed at the EGM, Gerard Batten will take over as interim leader, and I can think of no better man. He's an experienced, tough guy who stands his ground in that European Parliament, and he's loyal to the hilt. Long term, look, there'll be a leadership election after, I think it's 90 days of an interim leader. Let's get ourselves sorted first. Let's not worry about that. No, it's a divisive and silly question. I'm not going to answer it. Gerard Batten for interim.
Roger Goff, I've been a member on and off for about 15 years. Let me say from the outset that Indigo is not original. About 2004.
Questions, Roger, questions.
This is framed within a question. There will be a question at the end. We were a policy group, and to cut a very long story short, and the Lords from the House of Lords came down to our meeting. We weren't underhand at all. We were banned immediately from the conference. This comes down to the fact that the nominal leader and the NEC are not the problem with this party. If anybody in this room thinks that there is only the leader and the NEC to contend with, they completely got it wrong. Now, to give you an example, and I will then ask the question. Right, just before the referendum, there should have been these questions asked, or these things mentioned to the electorate. The first thing was, why were Greece nearly or made bankrupt? The fact was that their predecessors had bought so many submarines off of Germany that they became bankrupt. That's the first thing, but it was never mentioned. The other thing is, does anybody know about the Lima Declaration? Does anybody know about the Kudanov-Kalergi conspiracy? Does anybody know about the Barcelona Agreement? And as Bill will know, because I saw it confirmed in a piece that he wrote, who is the second largest coffee producer in the world? It's Germany. How the hell do they do it? Because they cut price the African nations. Now, if those facts were put before the populace, before the referendum, we would have won by 70%. Leave it on 3.5%. I would like to ask why UKIP never put those things, or never even encouraged anybody to put those things to the electorate. Thanks.
As well, but the question, just to frame the question, was why didn't we? In a nutshell,
Okay.
in one sentence.
The Lima Declaration, the Barcelona Agreement, the Kudanov-Kalergi conspiracy, the reason for Greece's bankruptcy, and the fact that Germany is the second largest producer or exporter of coffee in the world. Why were they not presented to the public? We would have won by a landslide.
There's a range of different topics just exactly like that we never get to put forward, we never discuss, and the reason why has been because there has been a dictation to the party from the so-called policy unit who were controlling everything, not just at the referendum, but also at the general elections, stopping us talking about things and controlling the message. Now, as you know, we might have a title of MEP or whatever, but who gets to speak? It's a handful of people, Susan Evans, Nigel Farage and one or two others. They were the only ones who could get a message across, and they dictated directly what that message was. And despite the best efforts of many people, I can assure you, to talk about a wider range of things, both at referendum and general elections, we were stifled and stamped on, particularly from the former deputy chairman who was running the policy unit at the time, who was making sure that no radical policy, no challenging thought was allowed, because quite frankly, she's another one who should be in the Lib Dems. Susan Evans.